yet? Let's hear that buffercorn yell. Oh, tough crowd, tough crowd. So we're from Highland Security. We're a security company that helps Web3 organizations to audit their smart contracts as well as just general best practice in securing their protocol. We also do a lot of work with venture capital firms and investors on investing in the space. So today we're going to do a little talk about what we find from both sides of the aisle, so to speak, on what VCs look for, as well as what you kind of need to do in 2024 in order not to get hacked. So my name's Kevin. I'm the head of services at Highland Security. I've been a security researcher on the bug bounty side and got the opportunity to go full-time last year, so really enjoying it. I'm here with Ryan today. Ryan, you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, good to meet everybody here. So I've been in the cybersecurity space about 22 years now, blockchain space for about 7. I'm a principal here. I also help a lot in our managed due diligence services for VCs and investors. So we're going to be bringing in some of that knowledge for you guys today.
So here's a quick overview of what we're going to go through today. We only got 20 minutes, so we're just going to go a quick overview, and then we have a PDF takeaway that you guys can get, and we'll be around the rest of the event if anyone has any more questions. So really, the first part of this is going to be kind of understanding who your kind of target market is, and then the last half of the presentation is going to be around the common things that all of the VC companies ask us, and when they're looking to do due diligence, either to make like a investment in a series round or just kind of buy a token or use the protocol, as well as like some of the things that we would recommend anyone kind of launching this year to kind of build into their protocol. So Ryan's going to start us off here. Ryan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks. So one of the reasons we want to emphasize understanding your market is that, at least for us, we're not necessarily sitting here as security zealots. We're not telling you that security is the utmost thing and it should inform everything about your business. Your business strategy should be informing your security strategy. And your business strategy generally depends on what market you're targeting. So what does your market want? Okay, maybe we're talking more DeFi than anything here, but usually they want some kind of value or some kind of return from working with you, first and foremost. Then they really want to know, where can I get the greatest return that is within my risk tolerance? So we're going to talk a lot about different markets and market segments, but each one is going to have a different tolerance for where they want to put their risks and where they want to get their rewards from. So when we look at traditional finance is getting more and more into the crypto space right now. There are ETFs coming around. Mostly in the Bitcoin area, but they're quickly going to come to Ethereum, and then they're going to broaden out, hopefully, to the rest of the cryptocurrencies and other assets inside the space. They're really used to frameworks like SOC 2, due diligence processes, but one thing that's really key for them is they have a rudimentary crypto knowledge. They're not going to understand necessarily everything that you're talking about in the crypto space. They're going to want to refer that to what they understand today in the finance space. Then you've got your maybe hybrids, the crypto native organizations that are proficient in chains and protocols. They understand the space really well. They're really investing more and more into the crypto space. But often what we're finding working with them is they have more of a rudimentary knowledge in the security space. So they're not necessarily looking at the SOC 2s or the NIST frameworks or those sorts of things, and they're looking at what you're doing in security. And then finally, we've got the degens. They're looking for price action. All they care about is, where the next to the moon is going to be. We're not going to talk about them today. They're not really going to be that concerned with your security strategy and your security policies. We're really going to more talk about the other two groups. So let's go through a couple examples. We've got a more detailed presentation here at the end that you'll be able to get later. When you're looking at transparency and you're thinking about it from a business perspective, often you're wondering, should I be an anonymous collective? Should I be working through? What should I be sharing with my community? Well, traditional finance is going to look for acknowledged identities. They are not going to invest in you or bring their money to your organization if they have no idea who you are. If you've got no corporate structure and you're purely a DAO with no backing of an LLC or something like that, it's going to put them off in some way. They're also looking for published information that is readily available to them. So it needs to be on Gitbook or on your website somewhere that actually details out the questions they're looking for. or they're going to need access directly to you and your team to answer those questions before they're going to invest, which is going to take time away from them. Now, they're also looking for the same things that the crypto natives are looking for: the public source code repositories, some kind of open governance model if there is decentralized governance. Your vesting schedule needs to be public and needs to be transparent, so they need to know who's getting those coins and what's going on. And they need to have some kind of listing generally. Okay, yeah, you're on DeFi Llama, or you're on some of these other crypto sites that they can actually get information about you. Notice none of this generally looks like security information right now. It's because what they're looking for and what all of your clients are looking for is they want to compare your strategy to their risks. And their risks are often things like sanctioned entity risks or KYC, anti-money laundering type of risks that they're looking at today, which you may not even consider into a security policy, but is something that is directly in line with their risk management practices. So what about vulnerability management? When somebody tells you you have a vulnerability, what are they going to look for? They're not just looking for an audit. Often when we're working with organizations today, they're going to have an audit, and it might be some random company that's just shown up 6 weeks ago, but gave them the best price and had some availability. That's not going to cut it for the traditional finance space, and honestly, that's not really going to cut it generally for the crypto native space either. They're going to look for the auditors that they trust, which might be different depending on the organization. So if you already know who your target market is and you have contacts with them, ask them who they would like to see you get an audit from. And don't just take any company that you actually see. Bug bounty programs are a little more open for that. It doesn't have to even be a hosted bug bounty program. It can in some ways be private if you're a big enough organization and trusted enough. But you have to have enough of a bounty to match the amount of TVL you have or the value that they're putting into your project. And then finally, this is something that we see missing in a lot of places. It's how you're actually going to respond to a notification that there is a vulnerability. Do you have an upgrade path, or do you have a migration path, for example, for your clients? And is that something that you're transparent with your user base on? Now, the crypto natives are looking more of like, do you have multiple audits or not? Is the audit over the last code that you've pushed on chain or not? Or is it something from a previous version? And are those auditors actually acknowledging the audits? And what I mean by that is some auditors can post the audits that they've done on their site. Some of them don't. But for things like rug pulls, that kind of thing, nowadays they're actually saying they're getting an audit from a certain organization. They might even claim that they got it and it went great. But if there's no public availability for that audit file as well, and if it's not posted by the auditor themselves, then there's less trust in that audit. So you need to find somebody who's actually going to stand behind the audit that they've done. And then finally, from a control perspective, when you're looking at how much control do you have over the project that you're deploying, you might want it to be incredibly decentralized. No one has control over it at all. It's completely immutable, and you want it to live on its own after you launch. Those are great ideologies for the space, but they sometimes don't line up with the TradFi or the crypto native expectations right now. TradFi is looking more of like, do you have the ability to actively respond? Take USDC, for example, that can blacklist addresses that are sanctioned or that were involved in a hack. They're looking for those types of capabilities. They're also looking for you to have some kind of strategy when it comes to crisis management or managed response capabilities and what you can actually do. And first and foremost, on this entire list, they want to make sure that they limit their exposure to sanctioned entities, which means if you have controls that can help them do that, you're much more attractive. Now, here's where that does not necessarily map with the crypto natives. They're much more accepting of decentralized protocols and capabilities. They want to see some DAO governance. They probably want to participate in that DAO governance. And they want enforcement of things like multi-sig, time locks, et cetera, for things like code changes. Now, there are a lot more examples of this that we'll be able to share after the presentation, but here's just some things that you can look at that might inform your strategy.
Awesome. So now that you have an idea of kind of what your strategy should be and kind of base it off of who your target market is, let's take a look at kind of how most protocols are approaching security today. If you notice that this is a very code-centric, code testing type of methodology, there's this period of kind of building, like a lot of what's going on here this week, where code commits are flying, people slinging around code. You get to a point where you have a good prototype and you want to launch it, and you start talking to audit companies. A lot of audit companies now, you need about a 6-month lead time, depending on who you are, which is kind of crazy. But you go through this loop of audits or multiple audits, fixing vulnerabilities, re-auditing, and this kind of like nth degree circular pattern, and then you ultimately launch. Inevitably, what we've kind of find out that this approach doesn't really work because there's either going to be a hack where you lose money and get it back, or a full kind of compromise where you're out funds. And that's kind of where the response aspect comes in. So if you haven't really thought about some of the security items that you need to do up front, this could be a bad day for your protocol, and sometimes even kind of like protocol ending in a lot of cases. Nowadays, you can usually negotiate to get like something back, but I would say that's not a really good thing to rely on. So the way that we like to look at it is a little bit more of a holistic approach. So we have this long list of security items on the left. We're definitely not recommending that you do everything in this list. Again, it kind of comes back to your strategy and kind of what your target market is going to expect. But what we do recommend is the earlier that you start kind of thinking about this, the more value you'll get in the later half of the kind of development process. So if you look at a little scale here, some of these kind of items, if you think about them up front, really go a long way. So I think out of the top two there, I think really are kind of minimum table stakes nowadays. With the cybersecurity program, a lot of funds are lost just to kind of your Web 2 social engineering and kind of phishing attacks. Those problems have kind of been solved. You can get software out there. There's lots of resources out there that you can kind of reuse for Web 2. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel for that one. I think a threat model is also a really great place to start. Basically what a threat model is a design document where you kind of just list out all the likely threats that your protocols will face and how you're going to design your protocol to be resilient to those threats. After that, in the pre-launch phase, there's a whole host of things that you could do. I think a lot of this is really based, again, on kind of your code, who your target market is, what your tech stack looks like. I think some capabilities in all of these phases are generally a good idea, just to kind of, the tricky part with security is you're only as strong as your kind of weakest link. It's a very cliche phase in the security phase, but it's unfortunately very true. And then once you launch, again, there's some activities that you should keep in mind here. I think the big one that Ryan kind of mentioned is a bug bounty program. A lot of people kind of associate bug bounty program with like Immunify or some of those other big kind of hosted providers in the space. Really doesn't have to be that. I think you could do your self-hosted one. I think the point is if you just have a public place where people can come to report you vulnerabilities, that's really what you're going for there. All right. Now we're going to get into the meat of the matter here. So with all of that being said, every time we talk to kind of these VC firms, potential investors, and the like, this kind of all comes back to 6 things that they all kind of look at a high level. Within these 6 things, some of them have different kind of tolerance thresholds of like what they like to see. But if you have an element of all of these 6 things, you're going to be in a good spot, particularly with the VC firms. So the first one I kind of mentioned is like a basic cybersecurity program. Again, this stuff is out there in the Web 2 space. We don't really need to reinvent the wheel for Web 3. I think it's just all about understanding who your threats are and then tailoring something to that. So if you look at things, it seems like most people are using kind of Google Drive, some sort of like messaging Discord, just some like kind of basic hardening and some security hygiene in that space really goes a long way. The next kind of component here is access controls. Really looking for like a tiered access model. That could be through the use of kind of multi-sigs, but then also with something like OpenZeppelin's access control, ownable libraries, really kind of defining each of roles and what they should do, and then kind of having that associated testing, which is the next one, to really test out those roles. A lot of easy, low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities that we find just comes from a function that didn't have the correct modifier, and somebody can set a rate that shouldn't have be able to set, and people lose money that way. So really kind of understanding that in a threat model of who's going to be interacting with your protocol, who's the trusted entities, what should they be able to do, what should they not be able to do, where's the checks and balances. That really can be done at design time, and it pays dividends later. The next one here is really doing some product security testing. So it seems like everyone at least has like an integration test suite done where they're testing different functions, making sure they they all work together right. We're telling our clients nowadays to kind of embed some security tests in that. It's not a silver bullet, of course, but you can actually find a lot of like things that you probably shouldn't have an auditor telling you that just like kind of like should be done in the pre-audit phase to during this step. So the other area that we didn't really mention that much is defining invariants. So an invariant is a condition of your protocol or system that should always be held true. These are really good to define in the design phase, and then you can actually build some tests to make sure that they are true. Things like for an ERC20 type token, total deposits and should always equal the total supply. Things like very basic conditions like that. And then you can also add some kind of fuzzing around those invariants as well to really find those edge cases which tend to lead to the vulnerabilities. As Ryan mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of hacks still taking place. I think in our primary we said 1 billion last year. It's probably actually closer to 2 billion was lost. So having some sort of plan for the inevitable really it pays dividends, right? So if you have some sort of like, okay, how are we going to detect that something's wrong? Like, ideally, you shouldn't be relying on your community and Discord telling you that something's wrong. Like, you should have some kind of canaries in the coal mine up front to know that, hey, we have an issue that we need to take action on. And then I think another key part of that is like, who is going to take what actions? A lot of teams are very small that we work with, 3 to 5 developers, maybe some contractors mixed in there. Having some understanding of who's going to do what before something happens allows you to kind of respond a lot quicker, pause a protocol, or take some other defensive action to really kind of minimize any impact that happens. Kind of hand in hand with the incident response plan, specifically with crypto native and the TradFi entity, kind of publishing some elements of your plan also is a very good practice that we like to see and the VC firms like to see as well. Just to have your community kind of knows what to expect if something does happen, whether that's, hey, we'll still be able to withdraw the funds, maybe we just won't be able to do other things in the protocol, or if you can, like how they might be reimbursed, like maybe it's a governance vote, whatever you decide is appropriate for you, this is kind of a good spot to kind of publish that in your docs. And then the last one here is really around secret material protections. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the first point of, it all comes down to your keys at the end of the day, right? Not your keys, not your coin is like a big phrase that I am really a proponent of. A phishing attack can really hurt protocols. So just having some sort of technical solution to protect your key material, whether that's using something like a multi-sig, like I mentioned, where there's an appropriate threshold. It could be something like Fireblocks. That's a good option as well. But just having some strategy around that, like if somebody clicks a link, it's not a total kind of protocol loss, because it's inevitably going to happen that even I hate to admit it, but I've been phished as well too. It just is too common. If it's super targeted enough, it's almost impossible not to fall for it. We're coming up on time here, but we'll be around the event for the rest of today and the rest of this week. If you guys have any questions or want to know some specifics for your kind of protocol, happy to talk to security. We also have a QR code if you want to scan that and you like this content. We're going to be sending out all of this in a guide format so that you can kind of take this and as you're kind of building, integrate it with your protocol. That's all from us, but thanks for listening, and we'll be around on the side if anyone has any questions.